Out of the cot, and I want people in rural and regional New South Wales to know that John Barilaro achieved nothing last week, absolutely nothing. And when he walked out of Martin Place, the Martin Place Tower, his offices, and he said, it's a great win for rural New South Wales. It is not a great win for rural New South Wales. The guy kowtowed. The guy capitulated to the Premier. He did not achieve a thing. And he did that simply because he wanted to keep his white car and he wanted to keep his extra 100,000 plus. That's the only reason he capitulated. He did not achieve a thing apart from division, which is now tearing apart this government at a time where we need stability. Look, I am hopeful that the Liberal ministers who have spoken out and the Liberal Party will support this. As I said, we've spoken to the crossbench. The motion will be one that they can support. It will simply be a motion that is very much about stable government and the importance of the stable government at this time. We cannot have him as Deputy Premier. He has to resign. He has to put the Parliament, the government first, and most importantly, the citizens of New South Wales. He is not fit to be the Deputy Premier. He should not be the Deputy Premier, and he needs to resign. Look, that is actually a matter for the National Party, who they have as leader. But I do believe that, and this is where I disagree with the Premier, the leadership of the National Party is not just an issue now for the National Party. It is, in fact, an issue for the whole of New South Wales, because this guy is erratic. He's incapable of making solid decisions. He's incapable of making sure that the people of New South Wales are being put first. So the leadership, who they choose, is up to them, but I disagree, as I said, with the Premier. This is, in fact, a matter for all of us, which is why we're seeking to bring this to the Parliament. We cannot have stable government. This is not going to fix itself. He has to stand aside. And I will say to those national ministers that walk out here in the backbenches that think that they can keep backing him, think again. The sentiment is against you on this, and we are all watching to see what your priorities are. Are your priorities about stable government, or are your priorities about backing a man who puts himself and his own interests ahead of the citizens of New South Wales? And that's what John Barilaro does time and time again. You have to remember, this is not a one-off. This has occurred numerous times, and each time I have asked why John Barilaro is allowed to get away with this. But this time he has gone too far. In trying to bring down a government in a pandemic and a recession is not appropriate. And we will do whatever we can to restore stable government in New South Wales. We will not in any way undermine protection for koalas, but I will say this is not about koalas. This is, in fact, about John Barilaro and his inability to work with other people. It's about John Barilaro and his own ego, and he has to stand aside. He must stand aside. This cannot continue. For John, I grew up in the country. You will get no greater advocate within the Labor Party, and I will say within the Parliament, than me for rural and regional New South Wales. The first place I visited when I was leader was rural and regional New South Wales, because I believe it is important. But if rural and regional New South Wales think that under the John Barilaro's leadership, the Nationals are focused on them, they are sadly mistaken. John Barilaro is all about himself. He had the opportunity last week, if he was going to be for rural New South Wales, to stand by his conviction, but he didn't. He kowtowed, he capitulated to the Premier, and he walked out of there, and then he pretended that he got something simply because he wanted to keep his white car and his $100,000 plus salary. He didn't get anything. He didn't get anything. Instead, he has destabilised the government at a time where we need stable government. And as an opposition, a responsible opposition, we will not sit by and let that happen. I hope that I have demonstrated as leader of the Labor Party that I will always be about the best decisions for New South Wales. As you know, there have been times where I have backed the Premier. I have stood there and I have said she's done the right thing. I have given her credit for issues, but I have also called them out when they've done the wrong thing. And right now, both the Liberal and the National Party are doing the wrong thing. I ask those National Party ministers who are backing him to consider all people in New South Wales, to consider those rural and regional communities, to consider those people who would normally support the National Party, because you are not doing the right thing. You have absolutely lost touch with what's happening in rural and regional New South Wales.
Koala protection?
Our policy is to support, we have said from day one that we support all the recommendations out of the koala inquiry. We have said that we are concerned about land clearing and we will not walk away from this SEP. We do not believe that this SEP is in fact about koala protection and imposing on the rights of farmers. This is about development on the North Coast. That's what this is about.
So is your team 100% behind you then on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's been discussed by the Shadow Cabinet?
I can tell you that we are a party that understands the importance of protecting our wildlife. You've heard me say many times that we saw perhaps 1 billion of our wildlife destroyed during those fires. We are not going to in any way weaken protections, and we support all the recommendations out of that inquiry, and we will make sure that even in terms of the definition of what is, species that are at risk, we will go even that far. So I just say to you, though, that this is not about koalas. Don't make this about koalas. This is about the National Party and a leader that continues to put himself before the people of rural New South Wales.
I just asked one more time, though, do you have an actual policy? Because this has all started from koala protection itself.
Yeah, sure.
This is why John Barilaro is facing this criticism now. This is why you're coming out today. The fundamental issue is the koala protection.
No, the fundamental issue is not koala protection.
Where can we get a copy of your policy? Where is it?
The fundamental issue is not koala protection. If we go into the election, we will give you our policy on koala protection.
Okay, so you don't have a policy right now.
I will say to you, this is not about koala protection, and that's my answer. This is about a National Party that is destabilised and has now destabilised government here. This is not at all about koalas, and don't think it is. This is absolutely not about koalas, and it's not about farmers. It's actually about property development.